Welcome
to the Bring Me to Life podcast.
It's time to wake up
and shine on. Hello. Welcome to another episode of the Bring Me to Life podcast. I'm Shannon Shine.
I'm Silaman. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate you.
Yeah, last week we discussed working through trauma, and we had several listeners comment on relationship trauma, and we kind of dove into those fields too. So we're going to kind of work through that a little bit, I think, this evening, because we get a lot of questions about our relationship as
coming at you
a
with a quick
divine partnership
update
and
for the week. If you're
how
not
we
familiar
work
with
and
me
co-create
or my
together.
work,
So
I'm an astrologer,
those that have
channeler,
learned our
and
story also
counselor.
know that we have
really-
been living
Oh, that
together
was my
since
bad.
the day we met, and
Sorry.
I've had a bit of a divine meeting scenario. So
We had some audio going there, but Auto DJ, thank you for that. Sorry about that, Shannon. I interrupted you. You can keep going.
you interrupted me with me.
No, that was actually our astrology update from BP that was playing after our intro because I had Auto DJ on from our last radio show.
Okay. So, hi guys. Last week we discussed working through trauma, and because
There's so much drama all the time.
yeah, so we had several listeners comment on different relationship trauma, and we got to dive into those feelings too. So we tend to get a lot of questions about our relationship and how we're a divine partnership that works and co-creates together. And those that know our story also know that we've been living together since the day we met, and we had a bit of a divine meeting scenario. So this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about relationships and our experience as a couple, as well as we would love to hear some of your questions and feedbacks on this topic as well. So we would love to see you in the chat at bringmetolife.com/podcasts, or join us in the Bring Me to Life community group on Facebook, because we have some discussions there.
Yeah, and I see there's already some people in there asking some questions, and we will get to those questions. So thank you for sharing them. And this is a really powerful topic, something that we have some experience with together, and it's going to be very healing because I think most, if not all of us, have a lot of relationship trauma.
Yeah, and I see some people in the chat, you're talking about the full moon and affirmations and meditation stuff. We're going to do a meditation at the very end, so if you stick around with us for the full episode, you get a meditation at the end. We also will do a reading. You already heard that we have an update from our friend BP, and CeeLo's going to do a solar flare update. So real quick, before we dive into the topic of the evening, I do want to give a few other shout outs to some things that have happened on the network. This last week, we finally released Incense and Whiskey. They released 6 episodes, and they talk about all kinds of things, including dating during COVID and how they go about it. We also had a few episodes of Through the Eyes of the Angels and Angel Hour, and her last episode was on manifesting. However, she also recently did an episode on karmic relationship patterns. So if you're here today for the relationship discussion, I highly suggest you check out Sarah Hall's perspective on it as well, because she's got a lot of just really divine messages from the angels. And then today, CeeLo, you hosted an episode of Afternoons with the Dudes on healing trauma. How'd that go for you?
It was a really good episode. We had, there were 3 of us in there, and we were talking about all kinds of stuff, and it was really good for us, particularly as men, coming together to talk about relationship trauma, because there's such a stigma with men and talking about their feelings and how they truly feel, and trying to stay tough or whatever. So we broke down some of those, and we're able to get a lot of experience out there. We talked about our experiences. We also talked about what has helped us so far with healing trauma, and it's a process. It's something that we continue to evolve through, and I think it's something that we don't need to be afraid of, and we don't need to prolong our suffering from trying to avoid the trauma.
I thought it was interesting that you all touched on a lot of different relationship situations and sexuality traumas. So I think that's a good lead into tonight's main topic. And it's a reflection of how so many of us are always healing from different forms of relationships, whether they be romantic relationships or relationships with our friends, our family, or whatever. But some of the things I wanted to cover tonight are like boundaries and things that we've learned from previous experiences, which again, you guys talked a lot about different things like that on Afternoons with the Dudes. So anyone listening that wants a masculine perspective, I highly suggest checking out that podcast. And they actually do a live video version of that on YouTube. Look up the Bring Me to Life network and check it out.
Yes, please do. I would really appreciate, we had a bunch of women in the chat room today, which was really cool to see, because it felt like they were sort of cheering us on as like, you guys are doing a great job.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure things come up, but the first episode of Afternoons with the Dude, you had a big round table, and I thought it was interesting how the more sensitive ones were the ones who showed up today and were willing to share their emotions, and that was really powerful to see some different perspectives that I may not have heard otherwise. So I really enjoyed that discussion.
Yeah,
but
it's important.
Yeah, so go check out Afternoons with the Dudes. But I want to dive into a couple of things, like what were some of the most negative points in our last relationships that kind of maybe traumatized us?
Yes. So, I mean, I was traumatized for years after my last relationship, and I basically gave up and was like, you know what? F relationships. I'm never going to be in one. I'm going to stay single for my whole life because these things are bogus and they hurt so bad.
Definitely. I've been really hurt by a lot of relationships. I have to say that I've learned so much from those experiences, though. And as much as I am frustrated by them, I am still in a lot of ways grateful they happened, because I feel like they've helped me understand you on a deeper level and be able to show up for you differently. One of the biggest things that traumatized me in my previous relationships was the ability to not be allowed to be myself. It was like they had this ability to control my perspective of me and how I should be. And I allowed it to kind of happen. But there were some things that were very traumatizing in the fact that I've had previous partners that hid my clothes. They made fun of my hair. They made fun of me. And it made me begin to have no sense of self. And I felt like I started really conforming myself to start liking and being the things that they liked. And I forgot who I was. Have you ever experienced that?
Absolutely. That was like most of my relationships. I was most of my life. It was like, it was like 2-week relationships, and never really a chance to get to know the other person. But it was, it was something that I kind of just changed who I was just to please them, because for some reason I felt like, I wasn't that cute, or I wasn't that smart, or maybe, I wasn't gonna get a lot of attention. So it was like I put all my eggs in this basket, and it was like I need to do the things that will make them love me the most, so that I will have this relationship. Because for some reason in my head, as I was a young man, it was like I need to have a relationship. I need to find somebody to do all these romantic things with, and maybe that's because of all the movies and society making me feel like I need to have all that romantic, all those dreams come true or something. I'm not really sure, but I did lose myself, just like you said, and it was something that really distracted me from my mission, and it made me feel really bad, to be honest, because like I'm trying my hardest to be this person that you want me to be, and you're still putting me down and making me feel not that great. That's so bad. It's like, why I was young then. Looking back, I'm like, I was so handsome. There were so many girls with crushes on me, and like so many people with crushes on me. Like, why in the world did I feel the need to be somebody else, to be in a terrible relationship? It blows my mind looking back at it now. But sometimes when we're young, we are so silly.
Definitely. You touched on a lot of different things there that I feel like I want to reflect on. One being that, like, I felt like I needed to be in relationships too. I've been in like steady relationships since I was in like middle school, beginning of high school. I want to say like freshman, sophomore year. I guess I had my first like 3-year relationship. Basically, it was like almost all of high school in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
And
that is almost every year of high school. There's only 4 years usually for high school.
basically from around freshman year to about beginning of junior year, I was in a relationship, and it really changed me. And we had a lot in common in that relationship, and there was a lot of different healing and growing. I want to say there was more growing in that relationship than anything, because I didn't really know who I was either. And I think that first relationship really molded a lot of the different perspectives. Perspectives of what I thought a relationship was going to be. And I have to say, for a while in that relationship, for as young as we were, that partner and I, he was very attentive, but I did find myself like getting more into the style that he appreciated, and the music, and like my friend groups changed and things like that. And it was really hard when we started to kind of like grow apart, because, you're in high school, you're going to change. That's something you're going to hear a lot through this episode, is me talking about how people change. And to be in, I think, a functioning relationship, something you and I have established really early on is we're going to change, because you and I are chameleons, and we shift, and our interests change and our looks change. And like, if you can't get used to somebody changing, you're not ready to grow with them. So you want to find somebody that you're willing to grow with and see them change, and you get excited about changing. But anyway, going back to that, I lost my sense of self, and I started to just like the things they liked. And I also began to realize I had no time for myself. Kind of growing out of that one, I had another relationship where, again, I felt like I had to be in a relationship. My friends all had boyfriends at the time, and a guy that was friends with one of my best friends' boyfriends decided that he liked me. And, you get those crushes in high school, and we were just kind of like talking on the internet, and he was hanging out with his friend, I was hanging out with my friend, and it kind of just happened. And it wasn't necessarily something I felt like I ever really gave full permission to. Looking back, I'm sure there might have been something that like led that person into thinking it, but I ended up just kind of like dating that person for about 2 years, and we were so not in alignment at all. There was a lot of pressure. We didn't have any of the same things really in common, but it was just because we were always all hanging out together, it just kind of happened. So a lot of times that'll happen to people. You end up with someone and you're kind of like, how did this, what? And you just got to make sure that you have boundaries and you understand. Speaking of boundaries, that was kind of something else. I had no time for myself, because after that I got in relationships where I lived with the person. And I'm kind of babbling a lot now because I've had a few more longer term relationships than you.
Oh, I mean, yeah, all of your relationships basically are long, and all of mine except for you have been really short.
So yeah, let me touch on these couple more things, then I want to hear your reflection. So going from that perspective, I went from kind of high school into college, and I was living in a co-op dorm where there was a group of guys that lived across the hall from me. And, when you get in college, you're instantly like fascinated by that. You've been living with your parents for so long, and now you have this ability to kind of go out on your own and start navigating the world and hanging out with people without that kind of parental supervision. So there's a lot of different pressure that gets put on by that too. You see other girls maybe in your dorm that are doing sexual things with partners. I mean, I'm coming from a heterosexual perspective here too. Maybe it's even more pressure when you're like a girl interested in a girl and you're now living with a whole bunch of girls. Like, I couldn't even imagine like brains. Like, I guess I can't imagine it because I kind of dealt with it too. But it's just like, there's so much different pressure coming from different social expectations that you start obsessing over these different people, and you begin to have no time for yourself. And then I had a partner that moved in, and all of my time kind of began to be theirs. And it was just so frustrating to feel like I never had time for myself. So yeah, I don't know. I guess the biggest thing was it was frustrating to feel like I needed to be dating so young. And I had so many adults around me telling me like, yo, you don't have to be doing this. Like, why are you doing this? But like my friends were doing it, and it was like in all these cartoons, even like Disney Channel and stuff. They're always like even like going after the boy and stuff. And it's like, why? It creates this false sense of expectation.
You need to like find somebody to be fulfilled.
Yeah, to follow the fairy tale, it's going to have to be this way. And like, as much as I love Hallmark, it just doesn't always go that way.
Yeah, it's like, why put ourselves into a box? You know, our movie could be totally different. We don't need to have the same kind of love interest. Like, we're all here to have different experiences. Let's kind of allow each other to do that.
Definitely. And we're coming from different experiences. So I had what I called the 3-year curse. I would date these people for like, it was either 3 months or 3 years. And it was so interesting to me. And then you had a different perspective where you've dealt with shorter term relationships and kind of longer distance relationships and identity crises. Let's hear about yours. So I've shared some of my experience. I want to hear CeeLo's perspective.
Well, I mean, you know, I had in-person relationships usually lasted 2 weeks. That was like the common. So my longest relationship technically was about 6 months, but I saw the person for about a month, like in person. And I've had other experiences where I have found others online that really connected online, were, you know, really awesome. And I was young, I was adventurous, so I was like, you know, I'll go out and I'll meet these people, I'll fly and see them. And some of the experiences with that have been quite terrible, to be honest with you, where I went to visit this girl in Texas who I thought we had a great relationship, you know, and I want to say we were technically dating or anything, but I went to visit her and ended up going to her house and her telling me, you know, I can't come in, like I gotta stay outside, like so, you know, I got a hotel for a few rooms for a few nights, but for about a week I was sleeping out in the grass, like underneath trees, and I got bit by.
She invited you there, though, didn't she?
Yeah, she was inviting me to come visit her, and I came to visit her, and she was just very, didn't pay really any attention to me, and it was terrible. She ended up, I don't know how, but somehow I got to a library to go online and to find her status being in a relationship with this person, and I'm like, hey, are you in a relationship? And it was just so weird and so awkward, and I was so young, you know, so it was just a very odd situation where she was a very completely different person when I was there and I met her in person than like talking online, because I don't know, maybe it's like a more fantasy where it's like that person's over there, oh yeah, well, we connect so much and this is so great, but then you go in person and it's so different, you know, you got physical energy, nobody can hide their energy in person.
Right. So the reason I wanted you to share that story, which thanks for sharing, was because I want people to realize how important it is to connect with people in person when possible and to not go off of just internet connections, because there can be a false sense of identity of people and expectations. And I've dealt with that too, where so the relationship that I guess I can call it a relationship before you, it was kind of short, but it was somebody I was really close to, and there was this different expectation when we talked to each other on the phone or on the internet, and then when we would get in person, sometimes they would act like I was the best person or the coolest person in the world, but depending on who was around, it was like I didn't exist and things like that. So it was super, super awkward. And you want to make sure you set boundaries and talk with people and see, you know, what is their trauma. So maybe that person's just really shy in person. Maybe not that in your situation, that was just messed up. But I'm just throwing out different perspectives there.
Yeah, got bit by some ants. It was quite a learning experience. You know, part of my relationship trauma to get to you.
Yeah, to get to me, it must have been because when I first started coming around. So those of you that don't know, listen to previous episodes. CeeLo came here for an event with some friends. It was a magical adventure. We ended up going to a festival together. We had some very interesting, awkward, but cute interactions that we'll talk about here maybe in a little bit. But in general, I went to Michigan for the first time, and I was at a festival, and some of the different people I got interesting feedback from. In I hope you don't get mad for me bringing it up, but they were like, "Oh, you're one of CeeLo's girls," and I was like, "What does that mean?" But it was because they were coming from a perspective of you like to hang out with feminine energy. It doesn't mean anything happened, but people perceived it as you were hanging out with a new female friend at different events. And they thought maybe I was just a new female friend. What's your kind of response to that?
Well, after, you know, this really the worst relationship I had really messed me up to where I didn't want to be in a relationship, and I started getting really uncaring about how I treated people. And so in a way I was like craving a relationship and intimacy, but I wasn't willing to go there because I was afraid. So it was just a weird, awkward situation where, you know, a girl would come around and we would connect and we would talk and maybe kiss, but that's as far as it would get. And then I would like run away. I would just be really unattentive, and maybe, you know, another person would pop up and I would start to connect with them, and it would. So, you know, it kind of was like that, and I do apologize to anybody that I treated unfairly because of my trauma, and that's part of why I'm working real hard to be better.
Right. I mean, it was probably something in the moment you didn't realize how traumatic or what it was happening, and that it was from a traumatic experience, which kind of leads me into the next topic or question I had here was, what do you feel like some of the trauma you deal with now is that reflects from those past relationships? That was a question someone sent in. So like, what is some of the trauma from the past relationships that still affects you now or affected you kind of up until we got together? And it sounds like you're saying like a fear of getting close to each other, which I know was a huge thing for me. And also like the fear of allowing myself to be me and you to be you. You know, I've been in relationships, and someone in the comments actually brought this up. They said, I'm happy to be with someone who isn't embarrassed of me, honestly. And that hit me deep because I reflect on it, and I know that there's been partners I've been with that were probably really embarrassed by me. And that's not fair to me because I think I was a great partner to them. But I can also think of times I was totally embarrassed of the person I was dating, and I would like kind of control maybe what they said around like my family, or if I would take them around certain friend groups or things like that. And that was kind of before I really healed and acknowledged that, you know, if I want to be me, they should be allowed to be them, and I shouldn't be with somebody if I'm embarrassed by them.
Right.
But I realized I was embarrassed because of the actions that they were making to other people were very disrespectful, and I didn't agree with their code of ethics, you know.
Yeah.
So you want to get with somebody.
That is important.
You want to get with somebody who you agree with their code of ethics, and like if something's inappropriate in public for you, then they need to know that that's going to upset you. And if you can't find an agreement, then maybe you guys aren't the right partnership. Some people are really weird with PDA. I'm kind of squeamish with it because I was raised in a house where it wasn't allowed. So I get real squeamish sometimes, but I've been with partners that are like, they just wanted to hang all over me and have their tongue down my throat in front of everybody. And it was just like, that made me really uncomfortable. And, you know, it made me have a fear of getting close to each other. Kind of how when we first got together, I could have easily been, you know, one of CeeLo's girls who you ran away from, which did happen. I just didn't allow you to run. You didn't get very far.
Yeah, you just didn't let me get too far. You would always follow me.
It's like, hey, what's going on
Talk
here?
to me.
Let's talk about it.
It's like, I don't know how to talk yet, but I'm learning.
Yeah. So that's part of it, was you were afraid to talk. I feel like at the beginning you were afraid to talk to me because of how other people have reacted to you.
What do you mean by that?
Maybe how other girls responded to you. Want to talk about the time? I think you mentioned it earlier on the Awake or Afternoons with the Dudes about how you basically almost proposed to somebody, and then the reaction was just crazy, and then there was a ring that got maybe used multiple times.
I mean, I could definitely talk about that, but you're putting me on the spot. You know, I got to put up some questions for you soon.
Well, I came prepared.
Yeah, you did. She spent 2 hours getting this ready.
I thought it was a really important discussion. I like to talk about relationship healing. It's actually something I've talked about on my Shannon with Shannon podcast. I don't have many episodes on that podcast, but a lot of it's answering questions about relationship trauma and drama.
Yeah, it's big. So, you know, long story short, I tried to give a ring to somebody, and that relationship went terrible. It was actually the one I went to visit, and she kind of ignored me and had a relationship while I was there, and I was like, what the heck? I'm going to keep this ring then, and I'm not going to give it to you. And then I was like, I'll save it for someone special, and I thought that was okay, but apparently it's not. So, you know, I got in this other relationship with a different girl from Texas, and after a long time, she ended up, we broke up because it was just not feeling right. And then I already had tickets to go there with my friend just to see her graduate, so we did. And somehow we talked one night, and it was like kind of shifted things a little bit to where we're like, okay, maybe this can work. And so she came to live with us for a little bit, and I took her to the spot. I tried to propose to her, and somehow it slipped that the ring was for somebody else, and she flipped out, and it really led to a really intense, like harsh conversation where she confessed about cheating, and I had some things to confess as well, and it was just like, it went from me thinking it was going to be a great relationship to, it was like, this is honestly the worst moment of my life. And we went back, and she, you know, she moved in, so it was so awkward. It was like, now what? And so she kind of like called somebody to come get her that she was already talking to, pretty much. And man, that really smashed and broke my heart. And I told my sister, she pooped all over my heart, and it was like just led me to years of not being in a relationship, years of mistrust and being scared. And honestly, until I met you, and it was like, okay, I can heal now. You know, it was like that. So
right. And the reason I had you bring that up is what I was saying is, when you go through experiences like that and you find out there's cheating, and you find out there's like, just she blew up about that and all these different things, it probably makes it hard. And I know from experience, it does make it hard to bring up certain discussions or topics or anything, even like just boundaries. Like, knowing that we grew up in very different homes, that's something I probably want to talk about, but I want to give you space to ask some questions. And knowing that everybody grows up in different situations, so everyone has different boundaries and ways that they do things. But did you have a question that you wanted to ask me? Yeah,
I mean, I was curious. You know, we lived together. You've talked about how we weren't a thing, and maybe I did run away from you a few times, but you came and followed me and talked to me about it. And I was curious if there was a moment in your mind, or maybe a few, that you can think of where the relationship kind of took a turn to where I stopped running away as much, and I started to be more intimate and allowing and stuff like that. Well, yeah, I definitely have a couple of those stories. I have one that I was going to share at the end with a different question, but it might come up now. Mainly when you and I started kind of getting together. Well, that's a great question. That leads into my other question I had in my 2-hour planning session was, what do you feel like some of the biggest lessons you learned from your previous relationship were? So
one of the things I learned was that it was important to hold space and that it was important to be willing to ask questions and to show up for something if you really wanted it to happen. But for us, you kind of just appeared in my life after I had gotten to the point that I just decided I didn't need to be in a relationship. So that was something I had learned from my previous relationship was, if it doesn't feel like it's divinely meant to be, I don't need to be in one. Like, I just need to be with myself and learn from myself. And you mentioned earlier on Afternoons with the Dudes that was kind of something you had felt into as well. You were just like, I'm ready to just kind of go on my journey. And if it happens, it happens. And when you first came, we went to that festival with our friends, and you, for lack of the whole story, you needed a place to stay. You needed a tent, and you ended up being in my tent somehow. And it was...
I mean, I had my own
You
tent.
had your own tent.
I wanted it to make a library, though.
Sila wanted to make his
I really
tent
wanted it to be a library where people could come and read books.
a library. Okay, so you want the whole story. So Sila wanted to have a library.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, you can stay in my tent. And then somehow within like an hour, I had like walked around this campground with you, and there was another random artist, and you were like, oh, she's going to stay in our tent now. And I was like, what? Like, no. But yeah, okay. I guess I have to
I
because
just
I don't
came
want to be
from a
mean.
community that was so open and so community-based. It was like not a thing in my mind even.
Well, I came from a place where I was a very private person.
Right. People here in the Appalachians are so serious about their space.
Yeah, well, you have to see it from my perspective. Okay. So I'm saying I'm not going to be in a relationship. I just got out of a 3-year relationship that was complete hell. And my new friend invited some other friends to stay at my house. And I was like, okay. So we go to this place, and you decide you wanted to make your tent a library. And I'm like, oh,
Great
okay,
idea.
this guy's cute. I don't mind. I'll offer and see if he wants to stay in my tent. And our other friend had kind of hinted you wanted a room, basically, to kind of hang out. And I was like, you can stay in my tent. I had no expectation of some random girl that I'd already had some random guy I didn't know in my tent. And now I'm welcoming some random girl.
Well, she wasn't random to me.
Okay, so that makes it even weirder. He's not random to you.
Well, I mean, yeah.
You've traveled with this random girl to me before, and now you're in my tent.
She was like a sister.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I had no idea. It was very awkward. Anyway, so I'm like, whatever, spirit. Okay, I told you I would go along for this adventure. Let's let this random guy and girl stay in my tent. So somehow we end up just all hanging out in my tent. And I had been looking into Reiki. I had been wanting to really learn Reiki. And I didn't know anybody else that knew what Reiki was. And I think it was you, or maybe it was her, goes, I would really like some Reiki right now. And I was like, what? You guys know what Reiki are? Like, what?
Yeah, she was talking about how she could really use some Reiki.
Yeah, because she was having such a rough day. And then I'm laying there in this tent like, okay, so this girl wants Reiki. And this guy being Silo is like, yeah, I know what Reiki is. Instantly, Silo sits up, starts hovering his hands over this other girl's back and just starts giving her Reiki, and I'm like rolled over with my back to them like, what the heck is happening?
What's
They're
gonna
just
happen?
are they touching each other? What's happening? And I'm like super like in my own energy, super nervous, like what's happening? They know each other. I don't. I just know them through friends and felt safe at first, and then it just kind of, I was like, okay, whatever. Somehow it ends up that I'm just kind of like sleeping, and then I'm like, well, I'd kind of like Reiki too. Silo, being the
like
gentleman that he is, says, hey, would you like some Reiki? So here's Silo giving both of these girls Reiki. And it was such an interesting experience. And then, she ended up kind of like scooting away and got like really into her own space, and it was kind of really awkward. It was like she didn't want to be a part of all of the energy and just did her own thing. And you and I ended up cuddling, and I was like, okay, I like this. This is cool. I like the cuddles, I guess. And then somehow, I swear I went to sleep. I swear you went to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And we both ended up waking up, and we were just kissing.
You're just, making out. It's like,
What? How does that happen? That was not expected at all.
Okay.
like up until that moment, we had barely even touched in, like passing, like rubbing shoulders. Like we were in a car together. He stayed at my house. I made him like breakfast with our friends and things, but we had barely had many conversations, but it just felt like we knew each other. Like it didn't make any sense other than it felt like CeeLo and I had just known each other, even though I was still so freaked out and I had 10 million questions in my head. Like, who is this dude? Where did he come from? Like, now he's in my tent. Now there's this girl here. And it was just like, in that moment, though, to me, it felt right. And then all of a sudden, it just stopped. And CeeLo takes off out of the tent. He just like, it's like, oh. And it's like we both kind of just like opened our eyes and it clicked what was happening. And CeeLo took off and just went and stayed at our other friend's tent. And I was just left in my tent with this girl like, what is happening? It was such an interesting first experience together.
Yep. I mean, super awkward, but that's life sometimes. And you did touch on something that, you know, I think we can maybe move into is you said that you feel like we just knew each other. And I know that's something our friend and listener wanted to, you know about is what is that feeling? Like, why do we feel like we have known each other for so long when we just have met and it's awkward?
Well, I think that goes back to like our karmic relationships and souls, because you and I've we've had 6 years to explore our past lives together and our divine connections. And I don't know if I actually got to answer your question. Your question was, when did you start shifting? And after that,
that was the moment, huh? When I kissed you
and ran
away, and it was so awkward. You were like,
that was after 3 days of knowing each other.
This is gonna be my man.
No, actually, I was like, okay, this is my first one night stand. Actually, is what I felt like, because I not even one night stand, because we didn't like touch each other. We just made out. Yeah. But I don't just make out with people. That's like, not me.
That was like me for like 3 years. And but you're like, what the heck is this? I don't do this. I don't kiss and run away. I kiss and date you for 3 years.
Well, now 6. Yeah. So it was like, to answer your question, CeeLo did that, and then the next day at the event, we didn't talk at all. Every time we saw each other, he kind of just danced his way into a huge wave of people. And I was just like, well, if it's meant to be, he will appear.
Dance.
He will appear. And then it would be so weird. And I'm getting to what you said, because how do we just know each other? I would forget about it and just be like, it was just some awkward thing that happened at a festival. Sometimes random things happen at parties. Mine just happened at a festival. That's fine. But then I would think about it after not thinking about it for hours because I was working or something. And I'd be like, I wonder what CeeLo's doing. And you would just appear. And one time I was working in the middle of a storm at that same weekend. This is all happening in like a weekend, guys, like a 4 or 5 day event. I was working and I thought about it and was like, I can't believe that dude just ran. He just made out with me and then dipped out of my tent. And then I'm thinking about it and I'm feeling the thought of you getting closer. And there's this big lunar moth flying around me in the storm. And I'm just watching it. And all of a sudden you come out of the darkness of this event with another girl, mind you, up the hill. And I'm like, oh, that can't be. That's him. And I was like, okay. And you just walk up to me and you show me this crystal and you're like, this led me to you. And I was like, what? The crystal led you to me? I was just thinking about you. And at that moment, this huge moth that I'd been watching for like hours, I feel like it was hours, it's probably like 20 minutes, flew up under the poncho I was wearing, mind you, it was like a trash bag, flew up under this clear trash bag that I'm wearing to keep dry, and lands and flutters right on my heart. Right as soon as CeeLo got there through the darkness of the storm following a crystal. What? Like, that might have been the moment I knew something was happening. And it was just like, okay, spirit, what are you doing here? This is some interesting experiences. And you had mentioned, like, how did we just know? Like, I want to say that you just know when you meet someone that they're the one, but you don't just know. Obviously, I didn't know that he was the one for, like, ever, but it felt like I needed to explore, that experience. And I feel like you know when you find a human that you connect with, but at the same time it just feels right, even if it is like magical or weird or like, I don't know. I don't want to just say you just know either, because the first 6 months we didn't know, and we lived together, and we just decided that there was something that was calling us together, and you didn't want to leave, and I was going through an experience, and it felt easy and like it was working and like it was just meant to keep happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there are moments where you know, even though we didn't connect romantically at first, I didn't ever feel weird. Like, I didn't feel unsafe, or I didn't feel like I was just a stranger, you know, around you. And I think that's just like a sign. Maybe you're familiar with this energy because you've had a past life. Maybe because you come from the same star map of your soul. Maybe you are two beings who live on another planet together, who incarnated on Earth to help each other with whatever mission was needed. I think that we call it Star Family a lot. When I first started meeting people like that, we started calling each other Star Family, because you just felt like they weren't blood related, but they felt related. They felt like family. They felt like the family that you had always wanted or dreamt of.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I let you stay. Can I tell a little bit more of our story for a second?
Yeah.
So I also want to tell what happened to that moth. I think that moth is really important. So you asked also kind of like when I started to know. So that moth happened. I got it out of my poncho. I let it fly. And I was helping direct traffic. That's what I was doing. I was like up in the darkness in like this parking field helping direct traffic. And CeeLo came up out of the darkness and found me. And then the next day I had a shift doing the same thing. So that was like in the middle of the night. The next day it was like, I want to say it was a little after sunrise. Our friend Ashton had just had a set and I was vibing off of it. I hadn't had any sleep, but I had to go back to direct traffic for the event. And I kept thinking about that moment. I kept thinking about the moth, and all of a sudden the moth appeared again, and it was fluttering around, but it had a hurt wing and it didn't look like it was going to make it. And I was just kind of like hanging out with the moth. There wasn't a whole lot of people come in. I think it was like the last day of the festival, so I don't even know why they had me directing traffic. I feel like I was there for the moth.
Nobody's coming, but just stand here.
Yep, basically. So I was hanging out, waiting, watching this moth, and thinking about you and all of the weird things that happened that weekend, how you just kept appearing and how you ran out of my tent and we hadn't really got to have like a whole discussion about it or anything. And all of a sudden the moth landed and it just kind of hung out in front of me. And I look up and our friends Ashton and Sky were there, which were who you came with. You traveled with from Michigan. And they came and they sat down and they talked with me, and they could tell I was kind of like just distressed because, you know, I think about things a lot. So I was obviously like, what is happening? What is going on? I didn't want to be in a relationship. Now all of these things are happening. This weird guy's here and I feel so connected. I feel like I've known them forever. And the moth flies up and it lands in my hands. And I think it was Ashton or something. It was just like, you just got to explore your feelings. Like, it's okay. And it sounds like something Ashton would say because he's all about his feelings. I love him. And it was just like, they both were just telling me that it was like, it was going to be okay. And I was like taking their perspective to heart because they knew you and I didn't. Like they came with you from Michigan. I was calling you all the Knights of Michigan because it was just like you flew in right when I needed your help the most. And they just kept telling me and reassuring me that like you had this good heart and that I was supposed to just follow my intuition, and that they didn't know me very well, but they knew that I had a good intuition. And then in that moment, that moth literally died, and it just died in my hands. And I was just like, what? It didn't move the rest of the time I was there. I was just like, what is happening? So I took it back and I laid it on top of my car. I didn't put it in anything in case it came back to life or anything. I just wanted it to be somewhere safe. It wouldn't get ran over. But to me, it meant that the moth was kind of like wounded, and it made me realize that I was wounded a little bit and that I just needed somebody to take care of me, not necessarily take care of me in like a codependency kind of way, but that I needed a friend that understood me. So it was like a super powerful moment to me. And we ended up going for a walk, coming back from that festival. So we went through that whole festival. We came back and we took a walk here while our friends and everything was still here, and we were trying to figure out what to do because some of you need to get back to Michigan, one of them needed to get somewhere else, and it was just this big thing. And I remember we went for a walk and we were talking about our feelings, and you were just like, I feel like I'm supposed to stay. I don't want to leave you here. In that moment, my grandmother was like really sick, and I was going through so much trauma. Speaking of trauma, that was most traumatic thing in my experience probably was my grandma passing away. And on our walk we found another moth, and it was like in the middle of the road, and it was also just, it wasn't moving, and it was gone. So I had these 2 moth experiences. I actually saved them, put them in a Organite that I have in one of our grids, and they just kept representing this like new birth and coming out of the darkness and like the dark phases of the relationships that I had been in before. And they were super powerful for me. And I was just like, I feel like you're supposed to stay too. Like, we don't have to put a label on this because neither of us wanted labels. And that felt weird to be like, if you need a place to stay until you figure out what you're supposed to do, you just hang out here for a little while and we'll figure it out. And it was so hard for me to be into that because, I was somebody who needed labels. I needed the comfort of knowing that if I was going to stay with somebody, that they were going to date me, and that I wasn't going to have to worry about them putting another girl in my tent and like coming out of the darkness with random girls. And like, it was a big thing for me to just be like, okay, you stay here with me. We'll figure it out, I guess.
I feel like almost now in a way you don't like labels. Now it's to the point where
Yeah, I've switched a little bit. It's like, you don't need a label. You need to just know that person cares and loves you. Mm-hmm. Like, I know that you care about me. I know that you love me. One thing I've never been into my whole life was like the idea of marriage. That's something that's always kind of been conflicting in my brain. My parents weren't married, and I've always thought that when you force yourself to be in that, and this is just my perspective, this is nothing against anyone that's married, this is how I'm trying to reprogram in my brain, because I do think we have a divine partnership and we basically are married. The legal aspects of marriage scare me, and I've seen so many people that get married that it flips some weird switch in their brain and they lose that relationship kind of spark. So that was my perspective and why it was hard for me to understand labels. And now I'm at the point where I'm like, that's a thing that can happen. But for the most part, I want to be in a relationship with somebody that I know loves me, that respects me, and that is willing to see me grow and like be on that journey with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've seen from, my perspective as a child living with my mom, traveling to all these different places. She got married 4 times about when, I was moving place to place with her. And her, even herself, saying like she's learned she doesn't have to feel the need to be with somebody, to be married. And it is something that is probably good for some people, but I will say to everybody listening, don't feel the pressure to have to marry somebody or be in a very specific kind of relationship or whatever based on outsiders' opinions and perspectives. And what really matters, like you said, is that you love and care for each other, you have clear boundaries, and you can communicate. And I think that's the most important part.
Well, yeah, and that's something that you helped flip the switch in me, is to realize that I was like, okay, I want to be friends with this guy. I want to understand him, and he's willing to give up his life in a different place to come here with me while I'm in this traumatic experience, and he doesn't know me at all. This is from our experience. It's like, you didn't know me at all. You just knew that my grandma was dying. I just got out of a relationship. I was at that point, like, I wasn't sure I wanted to be in a relationship, but I was so used to like the idea that if I was going to connect with someone. Like I said, I don't just make out with somebody. And when you decided to stay here with me, there was no idea if we were going to make out again. Like, we were just like, I don't even know if we talked about that part. I think I mentioned it was like, so what was that in the tent on day one? And you were just like, I don't know. And then we kind of like got past that a little bit. There was like a hug that was just like, it's okay, like we don't have to talk about it, but do you like me? And you're like, I'm just fascinated by you, but I don't understand why. Something like that is along the lines of what you told me. And we were like on the porch of my great grandma's house, and it was like this like weird fairy tale thing in my brain, but at the same time it was just like normal happenings too. Like in some situations, like you hang out with somebody and you have to work through all those like awkward firsts, like what is happening? It feels like it's supposed to happen. It feels like I've known you forever, but what is actually happening? And there's like all these questions. And early on, you and I dealt with a lot of things. We dealt with loss. We dealt with death. We dealt with new beginnings. You had moved here from Michigan. That's like 800 miles or something away from where we're at currently. It's some ridiculous amount. It's several hundred.
It's at least 8 hours.
Yeah, so it was like all these different things. We've been through business adventures and projects and jobs together. And then I was like, are we super codependent? Like, are we able, and like we went through this phase of everything was bring me to life. And that's really, I think, why you decided you wanted to stay, was I was helping you with Bring Me to Life. And I was like, okay, we can make a website. You need a logo. And we were like,
that was a big part of it. But honestly, it was the angels were telling me very clearly that it was important for me to stay here. And I just felt, I didn't even think, I just felt that I needed to stay here and to help you. And definitely you being able to help me with that stuff was huge, you know. And that's something I really appreciated, because I was basically done with Bring Me to Life. And you helped resurrect it.
Bringing it back to life. Yeah, I mean, we say we're soul buddies because we're aiming to be friends and partners that are there for each other without those social norms and expectations. And we wanted to build something together. Like, I've always wanted a legacy or something that I could build with somebody that like helped people and mattered. I've been messing with websites and stuff like that since as long as I can remember. And I wanted somebody that like was into the same things as me. I dated a guy that was super into video games. I don't really like video games. I dated a guy that was super into sports. I really don't like sports. I dated a guy who was into music. Actually dated several musicians. I love music, but they all liked music that was not my style. So it was just like, I wanted a partner that got me. And like, even if you're not into the same things as me, that like was willing to be interested and like hear about the things that I was excited about. Like today, you were super excited about a graphics card for a computer, and honestly, part of me didn't care, but I was so excited to see how excited you were that I was like, yeah, let's sit here, let's watch it, let's make it part of our morning, and like, let's put it on our big TV, and like, it was a experience, and it was
really cool. It's funny because I literally, naturally, without even trying, got the day off today from work, and so I was like, okay, the universe wants me to like experience this.
Yeah, it worked out, and I was excited to experience it with you, even though I had no idea what they were saying 80% of it. So you want to find somebody that you can be excited
Me
with.
Me too, actually, to be honest with you.
You didn't know what they were saying either?
Not most of it, to be honest.
That's hilarious.
I was like, okay.
So yeah, you want to find somebody that, even if you're not into the same things as them, instead of conforming and being interested in only what they're interested in, just get excited for them to be excited, and you don't have to dedicate your whole life to everything that they're into. But it helped for us to be into the same things and to create jobs and projects together. I mean, our first 3 jobs, we worked at a photography studio together. We basically nannied together / was a personal assistant for somebody together. We've ran our shop together. We've ran 2 wellness centers together. I think this job that you have now, being a caregiver, is the first time we haven't had a job together since we've been together.
Yep.
Oh, nope. You had a cleaning job once. Hated that job. That was terrible.
I did. I went and cleaned theaters.
At like 3 a.m. with a leaf blower.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, so.
You know how you get popcorn out of a big movie theater? A leaf blower.
You blow it to the front and sweep it all up.
I love that we can give you guys some comedy in these discussions.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's important too to understand codependency and navigate it while still being able to do your own separate projects and things. We went through a phase where instead of it just being Bring Me to Life, we both decided we needed to focus on the things we were separately happy about. I did a deep dive into my jewelry and my art, and you did a deep dive into meditations and created your Silamon page. And then we both kind of did our own sort of musical DJ thing that we've collided together now. So making sure that, you know, once you get through that honeymoon phase, you don't fully melt into each other. You can still be your own separate experiences. Something else I think that I've learned, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, I think it's important to unpack the baggage together. I know the most healing thing for my past relationship trauma is been having you to reflect on without judgment. And it might be hard for you, but I've never had a partner that was willing to let me talk about experiences that I just needed to talk through what happened to me in past relationships so that I could even realize why something was so traumatizing or frustrating to me. And you really let me like talk it out.
Yeah, I do my best. You know, I'm not perfect, obviously. Sometimes I don't hear and remember what you say, but I try my best to let you be you, because I want to be me, and it really makes me happy when you know, as long as I don't break any boundaries, allow me to be me. I think that's important, because, you know, we're here on life to grow. So don't block each other. Don't be little cock blocks for each other.
Not to be cock blocks and things like that. I think it's important, because there's even been times where it's like, where we both have kind of questioned our preferences or questioned our sexuality or our thoughts. And one of the reasons marriage scared me, I think, is because it's like, once you make that commitment to one person, it's like, I have anxiety, and that just like would freak me out. And I feel like I would overthink all the things.
Trapped.
Yeah. It's like this idea of being trapped.
Yeah.
And the fact that you don't try to trap me makes me love you so much more. It's like I don't have to feel this fear of being trapped, because you let me grow. And like, I've never had somebody I could be like, you know, that person's cute, I don't want to be with them, but they're cute, and I can tell you like what I think's cute about that person, and you're not like, oh, I hate that person. That person sucks.
Oh, he's so well, I just see I'm just so, you know, I try to remember that we're all one, and that, you know, when you see somebody and you're complimenting them, you're complimenting yourself. And I think that's really cool, you know, to be able to see yourself in others, and to be able, so like when people have something really nice that I like, instead of being like, you know, F that person, because I want that, and how poopy is it that they can have it but I can't. Instead, I'm like, that's awesome, because in a way, I am experiencing that through them.
Definitely. You have to like, I think it helps too, because you get to see like what your partner enjoys, if you're willing to like hold those discussions. Or you can like when you let me tell you stories about something that really upset me about a previous partner or relationship, you get to learn why I react to things the way I do. Like one day we had a soda that was in the fridge, or like a tea or something. It was in the fridge, and it had been sitting in there for like a week or something. And one of us I would have drank it, but I thought that it was his. Like, I didn't want to touch it because it was his. And in previous relationships, if I had even thought about, oh, this is going to get old, maybe I should drink it, I would have been screamed at for touching that person's drink that they had in there. And so I didn't. And I asked you, I was like, hey, are you going to do anything with this drink? It's been in the fridge for like a week. And you took it as I was upset that it was in the fridge for that long. So you like grabbed it out and you were like, I'll take care of it. And you dumped it out. And I was like instantly triggered, because I felt like in previous relationships, it was like I'd had a partner that would dump things out and do things like that in front of me just to get a reaction out of me and to trigger me and to like just be mean. Like, I don't want it, but you can't have it. And it was just like, you didn't know that. So if I wouldn't have had the ability to like tell you like, that's a trigger. I've seen my dad break things in the kitchen, and I've seen partners in my past just dump things out to spite me. And like, you let me talk it out and like go through my little like tantrum for a second. Like, why would you do that? Like, blah, blah, blah. And some partners wouldn't let somebody like reflect on that, and there would have been an instant argument, and we both could have been like angry over something so silly and so simple and trivial, but it was super triggering for me in that moment.
Yeah. Well, I was just like, well, you know, I don't need to have it in here. I'll take it out for you. I'll get it out and dump it out for you.
Right. And if you wouldn't have let me unpack that baggage, you would have had no clue that that was bothering me. Something else, like I grew up in a house where, and with that relationship where like if you wanted to eat something in the house, you needed to like ask for permission or like let that person know so that they didn't get upset that, you know, they get in there and their like last cookie or something is eaten. And you come from a place where everything is shared all the time.
Yeah.
So sometimes I would be like, oh, I'm going to save this thing in the fridge and have it for tomorrow. And then I would like go and it would just be gone and I would be devastated. And I would be like, he didn't even ask me. And I've like released that silly thinking. Like it's not that big of a deal.
It's funny. You're releasing that thinking and I'm like, now I
should definitely ask her. No, you should definitely still ask me.
Yeah. That's a learning experience. You know, you'll learn. And yeah, thank you for communicating. It's important. If anybody has one thing that can make their relationships better, it's good communication.
Totally. All right, kind of looking through my notes here, something else I wanted to mention was to get past thinking that your relationship has to look like everyone else's. Again, as much as I love Hallmark movies, not every relationship is like that, and often they are rocky, and if nothing else, you're meant to go through several rocky relationships or experiences before you really find the one that fits you. So some people do meet their soul partner at first glance, but you know, you don't have to hold on so tightly and allow yourself to fall into a trap thinking it has to be a certain way. Like, allow yourself and the people you're experiencing these relationships with to grow. And I think that's like a really big key.
Yeah, I think that is too. And there's a line in Daft Punk where they say, if you want to leave, I'm with it. It's like, I am enjoying this experience, but I'm not going to like force it to happen. If you have another direction that you feel like you're going in, that's cool. Like, we can end it peacefully and humanely. And, you know, now we're better because we've had this experience. We've had, you know, this relationship that will prepare us for our next relationship.
Yeah, finding ways to be civil, I think, is really key. I've seen something in some of the spiritual communities that's been interesting is where they celebrate the breakup rather than they make people pick sides and there's a fight. Like they just celebrate that they've kind of finished their cycle together so that they can still be friends, you know, and they tell everybody like there aren't sides here. Like we're celebrating this separation so that we can both continue to be us. I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, me too.
Someone in the chat says, what can that connection that you've been with someone in a past life feel like? And how can you start to explore that idea?
Well, I believe that it's hard to describe a little bit, but it's just, you know, they just feel familiar. They, you know, you feel naturally yourself around them. You feel like you just have this deep soul connection where your souls are connecting, where it's more than just the superficial everyday kind of conversation where you're just having small talk. It's like where you get deep down to your soul and you express yourself. And how can you explore that? Well, I don't know, you talk to the person more. You like ask them about what they're feeling, like what they think the connection is about. You can, depending on the person, you know, you can look up stuff about past lives. You can do a meditation together.
Yeah, and just because you've had a past life with them doesn't make them your twin flame or your soulmate. Like, I've had past lives with all the people I've had my long-term relationships with, and that's why I think they were so long-term. Was I'm somebody who, when I make a pact in a previous life to like come learn a lesson, I'm apparently very determined to do so and try really hard. And I've had like these relationships with those different people, but in general, what you can do is ask them if they believe in past lives. Maybe see what kind of connects where they've been and feel into if you've been there. Like I've had past lives where I feel like I was connected to Native heritage, and CeeLo's felt like he's connected to sailor heritage, and we've like intermingled in those ways. I've had past lives where I felt like I was connected to kind of like the Sheba energy, and it's interesting because you have a past life where people have already connected you to like the Solomon energy, which we talk about in a Patreon episode, where we really did a deep dive into our past lives. We might resurrect that on to the podcast sometime.
Maybe.
But it's like we've just felt into our different experiences of what we felt like our past lives were before we got together, and we found a lot of coincidences. Just being willing to discuss that. Another question that came through the chat was, do you believe you can have multiple soulmates? And definitely. I have a hard time with the term soulmates and the term twin flame. I don't really like them. I like the term soul buddy if it's somebody that you want to have a long-term relationship with, because you don't have to mate with somebody for them to be somebody you're supposed to connect with. And I think the term soulmate has been widely, I don't know the term, just stretched in just so many different directions. And you can have a soulmate that's not somebody that you're romantically or intimately involved with. Like, they say that like your parents are some of your soulmates because they made a pact to incarnate you and all these different things. Do I think that you can have multiple soul buddies? Maybe polyamory is a thing. Like, how does your heart feel? How do you feel connected to these people? And how do you feel like you would like to see a divine relationship? Maybe you're somebody who has multiple partners. I think that you can have multiple experiences. Some of the people I had in my relationships previously, I feel like they were soulmates from different timelines that I didn't get to connect with CeeLo, and that I had a lifetime with them, but it wasn't what this one's supposed to be. I had lessons to learn, and maybe I stayed with them in past lives and it didn't go well, and I learned the lessons of why that didn't go well so that I could treat CeeLo better.
Hey, I appreciate it, and I agree. We've said it multiple times, your relationship doesn't have to look like everybody else's. It is possible to have feelings for multiple people if that's who you are. Everybody's different. Everybody works different. And the important thing is being able to communicate how you feel, and it's okay to explore your feelings. That's like what they said to you when you were thinking about me. It's okay to explore your feelings and to find those boundaries, and that's part of life, and it's part of how you learn more about who you are and about maybe your starry lineage or whatever you want to learn.
Definitely. Something I want to use to kind of round up this discussion is I wanted to talk about some feelings of how to find flow in a relationship, or ways that we found flow. So I have a couple things here, a couple notes. One is that it just takes time. It took us time. Like, we've been living together since day one, but
the more patience you can have, usually, the better. When you're first starting out, you don't have to be patient with somebody that is not right for you. Don't hold on to that.
Like, CeeLo and I, again, it just felt right. And again, another one is it takes courage and strength to listen, hear the person out. If they're blowing up about something, try to hold space and ask why. CeeLo used to run away at first, and he would take off, and I would be like, when you run away, that's a trigger for me. So even if you're mad and you don't want to say anything, if you can just not run away, because when you run away, it triggers my my inner abandoning feels. I've been abandoned so many times, it emotionally triggers me, so I can't tell if you hate me. And then like, he knows that now, and he'll just be like, okay, I can't talk, but I won't run away. So we've like discussed through that.
I'll just be really frustrated next to you.
I'll just be really frustrated next to you, but at least you know that I still care. So it's like, it's interesting. You just got to have the strength to listen. I think date nights are really important.
Yeah, date nights are great, because then it's like you could dress up, you could do something fancy that you don't normally do that just really spices it up in your relationship. I think date nights are great when we can enjoy them.
Date nights can be something simple too, like having a dinner. And CeeLo's did this thing. I like to call this CeeLo's 5 things I like and would like to see change practice. He did it once when he wanted to creatively find a way to express things that he wanted to see change. And I was really it was really respectable because, you know, I've had partners that just tell me things that they wish I would do or they wish I would do differently, and they're really rude and angry about it. But CeeLo created this thing. He's like, we're going to have a date night. We're going to do a little ritual, and I want you to write down 5 things that you like appreciate or love about me and 5 things you would like to change. And I'm going to do the same thing. And then you held space and we both took turns to say something we wished that person would do and something we really loved about that person, so that it held space for like the good and the bad, and was able to really heal. So it was like, one of the things that really stuck out for me was you really like how I get into projects, but you really wanted to see me go do things I enjoyed more on my own. So like go to a class or to get more involved or to do something. And it really helped me because it made me realize that you really did want me to go do things on my own sometimes, and that I wasn't like leaving you behind. And it gave me motivation to sign up for like a music class. And it also encouraged me to know that you liked that I got into so many things. So it was a super healing thing. So if you...
It's about to happen again because our anniversary is coming up.
Yeah, we did it for our anniversary. That's what it was. It was like our 5 years had came up and we were like, let's reflect.
And October is coming fast.
Yep, it'll be... Yeah, that's crazy.
Dude, I love fall, man. We got our anniversary. We got Halloween. We got my birthday. We got things, you know. We got. I didn't want to say it because, you know, all that shit. But just coming together to see your family for the end of the year. You know, regardless of what you feel about the holidays, like just being able to come and reconnect with family or friends or whoever. And I think that's really, really special.
Totally. All right, I want to say a couple other things because I know we're getting long on our episode, but a couple other tips I have. If you can, going to bed together as much as possible has been super healing because you get to
go to bed together, but don't feel like you have to every night, because sometimes I have to go to bed early and you don't want to because you are really energized, and then you stay up and you have a great night.
That's true. But I guess, okay, so I'll change that. Go to bed, never go to bed angry, and like always make sure you go to bed knowing each other still cares, even if you're frustrated about something.
Right. Don't go to bed when you're fighting and frustrated with each other.
And a wise older person once told me to not stay angry about something for very long if it wasn't going to matter in 10 years. So like, you know, even though you poured out the tea, it's not going to matter in 10 years kind of thing. Yep.
Be way cold by then.
Be generally interested in each other's lives enough to know what's important, but not let yourself completely be engulfed by it. So basically like be encouraging, respect each other's boundaries, and remembering people grow up differently. So again, like I always had to ask for snacks. I always had to ask for permission. I always had to do things. CeeLo had completely different boundaries. So we had to give each other space. Make sure you give each other space to grow.
Hey.
Let's see. Do you want to kind of look over real quick some things from the audience?
Yeah.
Somebody said, I know I have some questions about relationship trauma. I don't even know where to start. I guess what I'm experiencing now is having to see this person from time to time and having to see them completely different version of them, you know, seeing them from the way other people see them they are and not like they were in the relationship. It's been almost 9 months, and when I see them I'm still flooded with anxiety of how it ended and the pain associated with that. So I guess my question is, what do you do when you didn't get closure? You're pretty much abandoned, but this person's still in your friendship circle.
Yeah, that's really, really hard when you don't get that closure and when you have to see that person a lot. In my opinion, I would say if you see them and they're close enough, try to confront them, maybe even, and even if it doesn't work, knowing that you tried is a form of closure, where it's like you can go on for years and that opportunity is missed because that person is no longer in your life. You're not in that same area. You don't see them anymore, and you just kind of think, I never got that closure. But even if you like try to talk to them, at least you know you tried. Otherwise, I would say do your best. Like, look for what lessons came from all that pain, and learn from that as much as you can, and surrender that pain, and acknowledge it and be grateful for it, and then try to move on as best as you can. But even if you have to write a letter to that person and they never get it, that could be like a way to heal and get closure.
Yeah, I can come from it from not getting too much closure on the little relationship I was in between my long-term one and you. It was somebody that, again, I was with on and off for several different events, and they were one person when they were texting me, but they were a different person in person. And somebody in the chat earlier said too that they were with somebody who seemed like they were also dating like 20 other people, and I realized that that's kind of what this guy was doing, was he was texting all these different girls these same things, and then when he would see him in person, he would freak out because then they would all be hanging out at these events together and he didn't know what to do, and he wanted to be flirty with all of them, but he couldn't, and it was like super awkward. But then he would like come hang out at my house. He would like drive an hour to come hang out at my house or more. And I was thinking like, oh, I must be special, you know, because like most of those other girls lived close to him, and he's driving all the way down here to hang out with me. And then all of a sudden just something happened and he quit texting me and he quit coming to see me, but he would like left it off with like he was supposed to come see me and then just didn't that night. And I was like, well, where'd you go? And then nothing. And then it was like a week or two later. It was literally like maybe 2 or 3 days before you came. So I was in a really weird place when you came. And that's why I was really confused when you were like, let's make out. And then you dipped. Because this person messaged me finally after like 2 weeks of being ghosted and no closure, and was just like, everything we had was fake. Nothing you think that I said is real. And it was just like, then he was just like, don't text me anymore. And I was like, well, first of all, I haven't texted you in days. I've assumed that this was over. You just came out of nowhere finally with some closure, but it wasn't real closure. Like, I didn't feel like I got a why. And I had to like just kind of breathe into that and be like, okay, whatever this was, it's for the best, because, you know, we didn't really have a whole lot in common. It was another one of those situations where we had all been hanging out, and though I was texting him, it was still just kind of felt like I was almost pressured into it because it was fun. It was flirty, and I wanted fun and flirty at that time. And when he didn't give me closure, I had to take it as spirit was setting up something better for me. There was some lesson I had to learn from that experience, and that it was okay. And that didn't mean that there was anything wrong with me. And there was probably nothing wrong with the other 20 girls he was talking to either. There was something going on in his head where he just wasn't ready for the relationship. And you know, that's okay. Sometimes people just aren't on the same page as you, and you have to evolve from it.
So, I mean, the second part of her question was, how do you start dating after something traumatic like that happens?
Well, I think you just, instead of trying to date, you just kind of go with the flow. I think what she's asking though is like, how do you get over that fear? And you have to feel into the idea of people change. Maybe that person changed and they just realized that what you guys wanted weren't in alignment anymore. So how do you start dating again? You just go out and you just explore. And instead of trying to date, just go instead, try to have fun. And if you see that person out, instead of feeling angry about how they left, just understand that they're a different person now. Like they made a choice. They're not the same person who chose to be in a relationship with you in the beginning. So you can distance yourself, but you don't want to keep yourself from having experiences just because that person still exists. The dating portion, I guess the best thing I can do is, instead of trying to date, just try to have fun. Just try to have fun. That's what you and I did, at least. So I can only teach from my own experience.
Yeah. Yep. You know, like I said, it was traumatic. I didn't have any dating, really. I didn't really date anybody for years. And it was literally like when I was like, you know, fine, I don't really care. All I want to do is be me, and everything that happens is meant to happen. And so that's when I came here. You know, I wasn't looking for a relationship. I was looking for a mentor, to be honest with you. That's something I was trying to call in. I was trying to call in a mentor who could help me grow and learn and be the best version of myself. And that's what I was honestly looking for. So lo and behold, I meet somebody who's 3 years younger than me and teach me about these things. At the same time, I'm teaching her about things, and it wasn't like the mentor I was expecting, but, you know, way better. Way better.
I find that apparently I do good at just mentoring all ages. Like, age is so silly and trivial. Like, I had a friend that just started getting into a relationship after something similar where there wasn't closure, and she started getting interested in somebody that was younger than her, and she got real nervous about the expectation of society, and she was like, this person's younger than me, is that okay? And usually, you know, society doesn't usually see many women date younger men, and I was like, you know, if you are vibing and it's legal and you're safe and everybody's
as long
like
as it's consensual.
yeah, because there's consensual, like, why does that age matter? It matters if you're not mature enough, but if you hit a certain age of maturity and you feel safe in it and the boundaries aren't being crossed, and in this experience their families are excited about it, like, everybody's experience is different. That's why I'm talking about this, is I just want everyone to realize that everyone's experience is different. Everyone's expectations are different. What people want to have in life is different. So explore it with the people that you want to have in your life. But yeah, I think we could do another whole discussion on this, but I kind of wanted to go through some end questions and dive into the energy report before too late.
Let's do that.
So the end question, I thought it would be interesting to ask you, what is your favorite memory of us as we first kind of fell into our relationship, other than making out and running away from me?
Yeah, I mean, that was like top moment right there. It's hard to beat that one.
Or like something you learned from, or
yeah. Well, I know we spent a lot of time in nature, and there's a time where, you know, I like to be really naked in the woods. I just loved it.
When I first met Silo, he just got naked, buck naked, and just dove in some water and hung it out in the woods. And like, I was so not expecting or used to that either.
Yeah. But eventually I got to the point where I was like, I kind of want to get naked pictures of me in the woods. And I felt really nervous and like scared to say that to you. But then you're like, okay. And then you were like taking pictures of me, and it was just so freeing. I was like, I feel so free. This person's like okay with this, and like take pictures of me. I'm like, yeah. And it's more like there's so many moments like that where you allowed me to be like my crazy self within your like boundaries, and being able to have a friend who, you know, I connected with and resonated with, and, you know, we had similar values, and just holding space for each other, you know, that was great, because I didn't really have like that close of a person to just share so deeply with. So I just really, all the memories where we were able to really open up and share deeply, and those were, you know, all of my favorite memories. And starting off with the naked pictures in the woods, that
just cracked me up. We made a music video to, it was like a remix of Radioactive by Imagine Dragons. Our friend Ashton made a remix for Spaceship Earth of it. So we made a music video of it, and there's like a scene of CeeLo busting out of this water near my house, just naked. It's so funny. I mean, you can't see the things, but he was naked, and it was so funny.
Yeah. It's funny because we go back to that same spot, and there's like cars that drive over it every few minutes.
I tried to tell you that, but you know, you had just gotten here at that point, and you're like, it's fine. I'm like,
coming.
Okay.
There are more trees back then.
Oh, yeah. So mine's a little different. It's an interesting memory. So Mine's when you first decided that you wanted to be in an official relationship. I'm going to throw it back to like a couple of days before it happened. We were at an event called 3DL, and we were all in this like cabin together. It was like summer camp with all our friends. We were in our 20s, so it wasn't like we were teenagers or anything, but we were in our 20s. We were at this event, and here comes the Reiki again. Man, must be something with Reiki in our relationship, because there was this random dude there, and he kept saying, I really want some Reiki. I really want some Reiki. And I think I had been given like you Reiki or something happened, and you decided that you were frustrated, and you went to like the top bunk, because we were in bunk beds, and you went to the top bunk, and something awkward happened, and you were just like frustrated. You didn't want to talk about it. You just wanted to stay on the top bunk.
I tooted on you.
Yeah, I wasn't going to call you out. Can I tell
you called me out then. Why does it matter now? And it was so I was so embarrassed. I was
giving him Reiki, and he farted on me, and it was in front of everybody.
And everybody,
it was super awkward.
You said something, and everybody started laughing at me, and I was like, ah.
I was just like, I think I just asked, like, did you just fart on me? And then you like,
yeah, but with your voice, it was like loud enough for the entire. There was like 10 people.
So he took off into the top bunk, and then I was left alone in my bed, and this other random dude kept going, I want some Reiki. I want some Reiki. And I was like, I don't want to give this person Reiki. I really don't. Cue our friend Nick Malnicki, who's been on other podcasts. He was like, I could use some Reiki. And I like, the angels were just like, give this guy Reiki instead. And I was like, but I'd want to give CeeLo Reiki. But you would not come out of the top bunk. You were really mad at me for calling you out.
Mm-hmm. So that was so embarrassing.
Anyway, Nick Malnicki was like, I'll take some Reiki. So I was like, okay. And he like acted as my knight the rest of the night, because that guy was being real creepy and kept asking me for Reiki. And Nick Malnicki was like, nope. And he like slept on the edge of my bed. We didn't even like touch. There was no cuddling. It was just like he was a guard so that this other dude didn't try to bother me. And I was like so grateful, because I was super awkward back then. But I think it like triggered something in you that night, because you were like, this person is in her bed? What? She never, like, I had not been really like flirty with anybody else in our relationship. There'd been a couple of things where I'd like caught you talking to like girls or something. I wasn't sure what was happening, and like nothing was really happening. You were just talking to them, but they were into you, and I was concerned. I wasn't over jealousy then, and it got really awkward. Anyway, we came home. Our friend Ashton was getting ready to move down near us, and something triggered in you, and you were like, I want to be in a relationship with her. But you didn't say anything to me. You instead slyly changed your Facebook status to in a relationship with me, and before I could accept it, you took it off. And I was like, what?
I started second guessing. Maybe I shouldn't have done that.
And I was like devastated, because I was like, oh no, maybe he doesn't really want to be in a relationship with me anymore. And it was just like heartbreaking to me. And I had to like go ask you, I was like, did you mean to change that? In your face, you got so like nervous and blushy, and it was just so adorable. And you're like, well, I really wanted to ask you, but I didn't know how. And then you said Ashton could come live with us, so I just didn't know what was happening in your brain. But we had a talk, and we talked it all out, and that's when we decided. It was like October-ish, and we just decided we were going to be in a relationship. So earlier you asked me like when was the turning point, and I guess that was it. And I just thought it was so cute and so silly that it was through a Facebook status. How millennial are we? Even though we had lived together for like 6 months. So
yeah,
for some reason that was just such a cute, funny memory of us that kind of helped us fall into our relationship. But
well, I'm glad that you love it.
All right. So that all being said, thanks for going down memory lane with us. We've held you here for so long now.
Man, that was a long road.
That was a long podcast.
Yeah.
We want to dive into some energy reading because, we're celebrating the full moon.
It's the full moon today. How about that? How about them apples, dogs?
Maybe that's why we're feeling into all of these feels, because the full moon to me lights up our darkness, and it like lights up things that have been triggers for us so that we can illuminate those things. So
yeah, dude, there's We're lighting it up right now.
There's a lot of things happening. That being said, I would love to hear what our friend BP has to say about the full moon. She submitted something to the Bring Me to Life network that I would love to be able to share with the community.
Right, let's check in with BP. What's going on?
Hey friends, BP here, coming at you with a quick astrology update for the week. If you're not familiar with me or my work, I'm an astrologer, a channeler, and a counselor. And I'm really excited to tell you that there's a full moon this week on September 2nd in Pisces. This is bringing in such positive, harmonious energy. Full moon in Pisces brings our attention to Pisces-ruled domains like our psychic senses and our emotions. Now, all full moons represent a release of what no longer serves us, but a full moon in Pisces brings that energy into the emotional, dreamy domain. We can expect awakenings of some kind or another. Since it is in Pisces, it's likely going to bring awakenings related to bottled up emotions or relationship matters. We can look forward to having lucky energy, things like new friends and new opportunities just appearing for us. We also get the benefit of a boost in open-mindedness, so this would be a great time to break some old habits and replace them with new ones, especially in your home, your routine, your personal life, maybe your emotional self-care. We're going to have a stronger intuition, a boost in insight due to this Pisces psychic energy. It's going to bring even more openness to positive changes, and that intuition that we'll be receiving will help us to see really clearly which changes are positive and which we can release under this moon. There's also an added safety in expressing our uniqueness in any way that we see fit. So your opportunities may come to you when you do express your uniqueness or your emotions. Some quick tips for you is we might feel a little extra empathetic due to this Pisces emotional energy. So if you're someone who is sensitive to other people's energies, be sure to protect yourself and cleanse your energy however you like to do that. With a water sign and the full moon being great for water rituals anyway, baths and showers or water offerings are favored. You can reach out to loved ones and connect safely. If you feel any heaviness during this moon, that connection will boost your spirits more than it usually would. During this time, just embrace any of the changes that come in and who you are becoming. This moon is here to support you as you let go of who you were in the past, maybe even who you were yesterday, and love who you are at this moment, right now. So, that's all from me. Enjoy your full moon. If you want to get into my energy a little bit more, I hang out on Instagram a lot. It's at BP_online_, or you can just search for BP Online. And my website is lunarcounseling.com. I'd love to hang out with you over there. Okay, bye!
All right. Thank you, BP, for that great update. So now moving on to our solar flare update. Right now we have a solar wind speed of about 536 kilometers per second, which isn't too bad. It's about normal. And recently we did have a G1 KP5 minor geomagnetic storm, which means there was some solar wind that was pumping out of a coronal hole, which is, for those who don't know, Shannon's laughing really bad right now. I'm gonna turn on her mic so you can hear that one. Okay, so A coronal hole is a spot where the magnetic sphere around the sun, I guess, like we have one around the planet Earth. There's one around the sun, and sometimes there's a hole in that magnetic sort of force field around the sun. And when that happens, solar wind can pump out of that. It can leave the magnetic protection of the sun, and it can hit Earth, which will cause aurora borealis, which is kind of cool because it's like the protons of the sun, the energy, hits our shield, creates this beautiful color. But the storm has abated, so no worries, everybody. We will not see too much in the aurora. I don't know what to say. Aurora.
Something.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm not done yet. So we have we have not had any coronal mass ejections. We have not had any solar flares since our last update, which has been over a week.
Mm-hmm.
A week and 2 days. So we are still in the minimum of our solar flares. And that's all I got for you, so thanks for listening.
I have to admit that I think I laughed because I had an epiphany.
About a corona hole?
It was more the solar wind, because it made me think of how I shared the story. And you shared that you farted on me, and I was like, maybe that was like this mass release of fear of being in relationships that you released, and then you decided you wanted to be in a relationship.
You know, that's like the most philosophical way to look at a fart that I've ever heard, and I'm impressed. So.
I know, and I thought about it when you said some of those big words that you said.
Yeah, well, I'm not as embarrassed when you say that now because it's so fancy. You put in such a great poetic wording.
Thanks. I'm going to give you some more poetic wording. So I have a card reading here for you guys. In the first card, I have to say that I did a pull from this deck. I'm using my Light Codes deck. In the first pull, I swear I pulled out the exact 3 cards I gave you guys last week. Thought that was crazy. I said, okay, cards, I would like to get a deeper message. What else does the collective need right now? First card I pulled out was the Divine Masculine. And I thought, oh, that's good because we're talking about relationships and the balance. And I was really hoping I'd pull out the Divine Feminine. However, I pulled Divine Masculine, Soulmating, and Alignment, which I think is still a pretty powerful pull for this discussion. So the Divine Masculine card says, everything has its purpose, and you will not always understand what the purpose of something is. However, it is someone's creation, and that is to be respected. If you don't like it, let it be an inspiration to create something more aligned with your soul's purpose. Consider all areas of your life and reevaluate any part that may not be working. You can be your own parental figure by respecting your ideas and providing a way for them to manifest. Remember that you are the master of your own making, so now is the time to recognize your inner strength and motivation, and to be a leader of your thoughts and emotions, and instead of a follower. Stand your ground and regain your own self-respect and pick yourself up and dust yourself off. This is not a time to force against or try to control external forces. Is it a time for disciplining the way you focus, what you think about, so that you can create your dreams? To me, that's a really powerful card with our discussion about how it's important to not force relationships and force conformity and things like that. Coming up with the next card, which is Soulmating. So the Soulmating card says, you're having a new encounter, or maybe you're deepening an already an existing union. Right now is a time for profound change in the way that you perceive unconditional love. The chemistry between two people does not mean that they are life partners. It means that you've entered each other's lives to awaken, expand, and open your heart so wide that they can never be closed again. There's a lesson here. This is something that may last for a moment, a season, or a lifetime. Time is not necessary to shift the cogs of your heart and to feel the absolute ecstasy of you. This is a moment that can open you to a euphoria of feelings. The purpose of a soul relationship is to mirror your love and light and to learn and melt away any hard edges or walls that you've built in this physical existence. So whatever it is that has been mirrored will intensify. So intensify love. Love and peace will feel bigger to you, but so will fear and pain, so navigate it lightly. This reveals any wounds that hold us away from love, so that we can heal from them as we embrace more of the love that we've already recognized in our lifetimes. Super powerful card with what we discussed. And the last one that came from tonight's read is alignment. Your soul is your biggest fan, so remember that. It knows the truth of you and loves you unconditionally. It is continuously streaming this information to you, and it's time to tune in your mind, body, and spirit, because they must all agree in the now of what do you want. You can do this by meditating and focusing on your soul's name, whatever the name is that you give your soul, enjoying something you love, or having a nap so that you can reprogram. Naps are okay sometimes. It is not up to your soul to zap you into alignment. It is up to your ego to allow your soul to feel into its alignment. Its job is to maintain your soul's station so that you have a frequency to tune into. The nature of your physical life is to create and expand and learn. Sometimes life experiences will pull you out of alignment so that you can understand these experiences from a different angle. So when you are out of alignment, you will automatically begin to ask questions and want to create something different. Stop trying to create something that's painful and instead focus on calling in unconditional love. And through this process, you will gain the clarity about your true passions and true love. Being out of alignment can feel awful. It is easy to blame a person or situation when we feel bad, but instead of asking why something is happening, take a breath, return to the neutral, and ask what you can create from the situation. And remember that your soul is a constant loving home that you can return to always. So I think that's a super powerful reading. I've been really enjoying ending the podcasts in quick little meditations. We had a full moon affirmation submitted by Sarah in the chat earlier. She says, I release all fears and doubts, limiting beliefs, insecurities, and all obstacles on my path to becoming my best self, and anything and everything that no longer serves my highest good can be released. I think that's super powerful. Yeah. And I was wondering, CeeLo, could you maybe lead us in like a quick ending meditation?
Sure. Well, I have a healing relationship meditation that I can play, or I can just do something live.
What feels right to you?
Playing the meditation.
All right, guys. We're going to end it with a meditation that Suleiman has created. And if you need more meditations, you can find them at suleiman.com.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. Love you. Have a great day.
Stay awake and shine on always.
This guided meditation will help you to heal pain and suffering in any of your relationships, past or present. Is there anyone in your life that you wish you had a better, more healthy relationship with? Well, try this meditation daily and be open to miracles. Begin by getting into a comfortable position, sitting down with a back straight or lying down with your arms by your side. If you have to move around to get completely comfortable, go ahead and do so. We'll start by breathing consciously and mindfully, drawing our awareness into the moment as we allow any thoughts or feelings to come up. Accept anything that arises and allow it to disappear or melt away. Notice the oxygen spreading through your whole body. Let your weight sink into the ground. Relax each muscle as the gentle embrace of gravity keeps you grounded. Continue to breathe and relax. Think of a time that you felt loved. You can imagine one if you need to. And just put yourself in that moment, feeling what it feels like to be loved. Connect with that feeling and allow it to encompass you. Visualize a loving pink light coming from your heart, beginning to surround your whole body. And begin to see yourself somewhere very quiet, somewhere very peaceful. So as you surround yourself with this loving pink light, you're visualizing yourself in a relaxed, peaceful environment. Now think of a person that you want to heal a relationship with. And just visualize them in front of you in this relaxed, peaceful environment, somewhere you feel safe and protected. And as you visualize this person in front of you, notice their expression and how it feels for them to be near you. Imagine a loving pink light beginning to extend over to them, encompassing them as well. Begin to see them in a more loving energy as their expression begins to change. Imagine that this loving pink light helps them to feel more loved, and it begins to transform them and your relationship with them. Think for a moment about what it would feel like if your relationship with this person was fully healed. How would that make you feel? When you are ready, you can move on and begin to imagine another person who needs this love, someone who you would like to heal your relationship with. Imagine the loving pink light encompassing them as well, helping them to feel more love, to be transformed. about what it would feel like to have your relationship with this person being fully healed. Visualize their expression changing. Think about how it would feel to have a healthy relationship with this person. And now you can move on, and if you need to, you can go through a few more people. Or you can imagine yourself being healed in this pink light. When you are ready to finish the meditation, imagine the pink light fading away as you begin to return. Wiggle your toes and fingers. Take a deep inhale and a deep exhale. You can open your eyes. Share this meditation with anyone that you feel could benefit from it. And check out more of my meditations at seelamon.com. I'm also available for private group and individual sessions for meditation, sound healing, and Reiki. Make sure to tune back every Monday for Meditation Monday, brought to you by the Bring Me to Life Challenge. You can find more about that at bringme2life.com with the number 2. Thank you all, have a great day, and namaste.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can find more podcasts, more content, more awesomeness at bringme2life.com. There's a bunch of other podcasts that we have, and we would love for you to check it out. So thank you all for waking up
and shining on.
For many of us, spirituality is just the quest to find essence or true meaning and to really just connect with a higher consciousness.
Connecting with your spirituality is very important in this life. By becoming mindful of all of it, you can realize where you are and if that is leading you to where you want to go.
Listen to the little simple things, because it's those little simple things that are going to shift you vibrationally in such a way that will prepare you to become very intuitively minded and ready to step forward on the next part of your path.
I hope you can feel the love that's inside you, it's inside me, that connects us.
Thanks for shining on with us.